Welcome back to part 3 of the IMFS instructional video, which will show how to set up vendors in the system. From the main menu, click on the blue arrow for vendors, to be taken to its control screen. Here, there are two ways in which to enter vendor details. The first is via this section, which you can use to enter vendor details one by one. The other is to use the Import List button to quickly enter the details of many vendors that you might have in a separate list. So, if we begin by entering the details of a single vendor, we could start with the vendor code, which I will enter as V01, followed by the vendor name, which we will say is vendor 01, the country, which we will make Africa. Lead time can be 12 weeks. No minimum order quantity or minimum order quantity UOM, and a preferred order frequency of 4 weeks. Once the details have been entered, clicking on the blue Add button will place this vendor in our vendor list. If, on the other hand, you need to enter the details of many vendors, you can import them to save time. Click on the green Import List button to activate the import screen. The import screen outlines the formats that the IMFS can import, the structure the file needs to be in, and shows a diagram with the required headings and the order in which they must appear. If you need to create a list, then you can do so by creating or opening the template, by clicking on the middle button. If a vendor list does not already exist in the templates folder mentioned previously, then the system will create one called vendorlist.xlsx. This file can then be viewed by clicking the Open Vendor List Template button shown. This template has all of the headings needed to import vendor data into the system, in the exact order required. So, we can use this to create our list of vendors that need to be imported. Once a list has been created, it can be saved ready to be imported. I have already created a number of sample lists that we will use for this demonstration, to save time. Returning to the vendor screen, we click on the Import List button once again. This time, if we click on the Create or Open Template button, we will be presented with a message that a vendor list file already exists in the templates folder. This is the same one we created a moment ago. We can choose to either create a new list, and overwrite the one we previously created, or open the existing one if we need to make any changes to it. However, if you want to go ahead and import the template we've created, then we need to go one step back. So, click on the Import List button again, and this time, click on the Import File button. This will then activate the Open File dialog, which you can use to navigate to the file to be imported. The vendor list we created will now be available in the Templates folder. Once located, it can then be imported. Since it will take time to create the new list, we will use one that has already been prepared instead. An import complete message will be displayed when the data has been imported. Now there are 3 safeguards built into the vendor import process, and these are firstly to prevent duplicates from being imported for the sake of data integrity. The second is to disallow and notify of any unknown UOMs, and the last is to show any incomplete records that need to be completed. To demonstrate this, we need to return to the main menu from where we can open and modify the vendor list we have created. Use the Open Files icon to activate the Open File dialog, locate and open the vendor list. The first thing to know is that all of these records have already been imported into the system. So we would expect the system to prevent these from being re-imported. Also, I will delete some information for vendor 4 to make that record incomplete, and add a minimum order quantity with an unrecognized UOM to see how these are treated. Once complete, save and close the vendor list, and navigate back to the vendor setup menu. Click the Import List button, locate and import the modified vendors list file. After a short time, the import process will be interrupted by a message advising you that the system has found either duplicate or incomplete entries, together with unrecognized UOMs. Clicking on the OK button will halt the import process and open the vendor list, except this time, it will clearly show all duplicate entries, any incomplete entries and also any unrecognized UOMs. Since we know this list is a copy of the one we've already imported, we will not worry about fixing these problems for the purpose of this demonstration. But, if this was a legitimate new list that we wanted to import, then we would need to delete any duplicate entries from the list, complete any incomplete entries, and either set up the new UOMs in the system, or correct them in the list to what they should be. Once we have set up our vendors, return to the main menu to begin setting up SKUs, which will be demonstrated in Part 4.